I actually feel like I'm thinking of all those people that, have been in leadership positions that they don't agree with what their senior leader is actually doing or how they're approaching certain things. And unfortunately, sometimes a leader that is displaying poor leadership doesn't always listen to feedback. And I wonder whether they would be more open to it. And I know that it's bigger than this, and there's so many very reasons why they don't listen. But I wonder if a leader knew that you were truly standing united and you both had that principle that you were both, yes, we stand united on this principle. If you had that, I wonder if they would be more open to hearing your feedback. Not in every case, but I just wonder, because I've seen a lot of people giving that feedback and it comes from a place of, you know, subtly, I want your position. Subtly, I think I can do this better than you. So I'm giving you this feedback because I want your position rather than, and then there's a little bit of defensiveness that comes out of it and stuff like that. I just wonder, as you were sharing that, I just thought, yeah, if we are standing united with someone, I'm sure if we were genuinely united with that person, I'm sure that they would be more open to that feedback that you're talking about.
Well, that raises another issue, and it's something we should talk about in one of our podcasts, and that is followership matters as well.
Yeah.
And look, I did a rough search of a catalogue of a Christian bookshop not too far from where I live. There was something like 400 titles on leadership and 2 titles on followership. Wow. Although it's probably not a good word to use anyway when you're searching. But we don't really teach much for 2IC. People who are in a 2IC position, and we certainly don't teach very much at all about what constitutes good followership. And I do think one of the things we need to do as we move in this podcast and as people teach leadership in general is to start thinking more about what constitutes good followership and how do we support leaders who are not right at the top, but who are essentially in that senior level where they might be the 2IC or the 3IC even. There's not a lot of support for these people. But as I say, that really gets us into a different area for discussion. But I think it is something that we ought to address one day because it's important and it's neglected.
You know what? Actually, let's go for it. Because I think it goes with our theme today about talking about standing united. Because standing united is standing united with the person that is leading us, that we are usually, I would say there would definitely be more leaders that are under a leader than there are leaders that aren't under someone. I would hazard a guess. And I would hazard a guess that what I find is actually the 2ICs and those below, the leaders below, that are actually more hungry to learn about becoming a better leader rather than the person right at the top, unfortunately, not in every case. So what would you say is the secret to that followership? You're being a good 2IC.
Well, I don't know whether I know too many secrets, but one thing for certain is that we need to understand that leadership is not a position.
Yes.
It's more a behavior, a set of attitudes and attributes and so on.
I love it.
Now, some people's leadership arises primarily because of their position, and there's actually a name for that. It's called positional leadership. But leadership, given that leadership is about influence and about empowerment, leadership can actually happen at various levels within an organization. Now, I know we tend to equate leadership with being the top dog in the management hierarchy. But I just don't think that's a good way to characterize it. Leadership can happen anywhere within an organization because of the way in which we define it. We define leadership on the basis of our capacity to influence others and the degree to which we're able to empower those around us.
Yeah, and I believe that leadership is so much bigger. It's it's within our friends groups. It's in your family. It's out in the community. It's not. I see leadership as the behavior, as how we are acting to pretty much just helping those around us be better versions of themselves, really.
Well, yes, it is. It is. And look, in terms of influence and empowerment, of course, there are a few other pretty important things like vision,
Yep.
authenticity, integrity. Those
Yep.
three, I think, are significant. And the other one for Christian organizations is I think you need somebody who's a fairly deep theological thinker.
Yeah, that's good.
Now, that doesn't mean they speak theologically, but what it does mean is they search the scriptures on all of the matters that they are making decisions on, and they seek the guidance of the Holy Spirit. They really seek to discover the theological underpinnings of the decisions they are making. So if it's in relation to a decision about the people in your organization, what does the Bible have to say about how we deal with people type issues? And I think the Bible's got a lot to say, particularly as we tease out what it means to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. I think that has a lot of implications for the whole human resources management process. For example, I think our understanding of prayer and meditation and receiving wisdom from the Lord should lead us to consider within our organizations as we feasibly can when we're making big decisions, because somebody who might be way down in the hierarchy might also be somebody who's absolutely committed to pray. And if you don't provide opportunities and mechanisms to kind of harvest their own ideas and their own wisdom and revelations and prophecy and so on, you could miss out on a lot. So, God is not just going to speak to the senior person in an organization. And I'd have to say, I feel quite uncomfortable about the model that says, well, I'm the senior pastor, I get the vision at the beginning every year, and your job is to get in behind it and to support it. I've got some doubt about it, because we're all human beings and we don't all get it right. And I really, and look, there are not many pastors who actually really live by that model, because they do seek a lot of input from their leadership team. So I am creating a bit of a straw person here.
Yes.
I have no doubt. But my point is that the kind of out front hero leader is really only appropriate in the context of war or corporate crisis. Right. You need your sort of strong militaristic type leader at times. So when your church is going through a significant crisis, when your organization is going through a significant crisis, that's when your leadership has to be much more kind of militarily oriented. But generally speaking, I think we need to be as consultative as we possibly can. We need to push decision making as far down through the organization as we possibly can. And we need to recognize that the Holy Spirit is going to speak to people everywhere. And I think that's something really, really important for us to keep in mind.
The servanthood, which is kind of a bit of a contradiction to leadership, because people think that, well, you have your servants and then you have the leader. Well, actually, no, leaders are actually called to serve. That's what Jesus actually said, right? Like that's what I came to serve, not to be served. I came to serve. And I kind of feel like we kind of forget that we as like the followership is, we are there to serve still, like in whatever position we are, whether we're right at the top or the second in charge or third in charge or right the way down the bottom, we're always called to serve. And so I think that's one of the keys, is understanding that we are there to serve our leader. That's what makes a good follower. We're there to serve, but we're also there to serve the people under us as well, and understand that that is as important as a position as being at quote unquote the top, right? And so I kind of, there's a couple of things I would say to that followership is, number one is I think we need to have a servant heart. And to be a good leader, we need to be anyway. And I think that that's where I see a lot of poor leadership, your behavior coming from, is where people slip out of that I'm here to serve people, and they flip the coin and they expect people to serve them. And so I think that that's a challenge. The advantage of the other thing is looking at the disciples, right? And looking at, well, they were really, I mean, look which ones were really good followers. Look which ones actually went and made a major impact. And look at Peter, right? Like, what was Peter like? Now, he had his faults, but he was passionate, serving Christ. I'm going to be there to the end. I'll chop someone's ear off. I'll go wherever you go. He was there. He made mistakes, and yes, he denied Christ at times, and he had some faults. However, he served passionately, and I think that that's kind of a key that I would say to someone to make followership good. Now, one last thing I'll add to this: purpose. I know, Dr. Rod, it always comes back to purpose, right? With me, I mean, it's all about purpose. I truly, truly believe that purpose is the key. And not all of us are called to be at the top. I mean, very few of us are actually called to be at the top, because purpose is actually, I mean, we couldn't, if we were all called to be at the top, we'd all be standing alone, right? And it would be very lonely, and there'd be a lot of individuality in this world. But God called us. I mean, Paul writes, we are one body, but many parts, and Christ is the head of that body. And so we all have our part to play. And I think that if we can find our purpose within the part that we have to play, then that's what we can then flow on with, and be that better followership that you were talking about. Understanding that I don't need to be in a higher position to do a better job for Christ. No, my job is to do what God has called me in the position that I'm in to serve there. I know I went on a bit of a rant there, Dr. Rod, and I don't know whether you can still see me or not, but are you just sitting there quietly because...
No, I can see you. I can see you. Don't worry.
Great.
Everything's good. There's a fair bit of flickering going on, but I can still see you. And look,
I
agree with
Yash,
what
are
you're
you
saying
still
about
seeing
purpose.
flickering? Sorry. Go ahead, Dr. Rod.
No, that's okay. I certainly agree with you in respect of purpose. And
Yep.
I think it's incumbent upon us to do the very best we can to figure out what God's purpose is for us.
Yep.
And often people who are in positions well below the top position, they're still being groomed by God, or maybe even by that organization, for more senior positions of leadership. And, I often say I had a 38-year apprenticeship before I actually got into my most significant leadership role. So it can sometimes take a significant period of time. And we simply need to understand that leadership or our preparation can take a considerable time. And our purpose is the important thing. And honestly, if we know our purpose, we don't necessarily then have that desire to climb to the very top. And what we need to keep in mind is God saying to us, well done, good and faithful servant.
I
You're
love
stuck
that.
to your purpose.
Yeah, I love that. You're absolutely right, because I think that if we're chasing importance out of a title, like we're always going to be chasing a title because there's always a bigger, better title, right? But if we're pursuing purpose and we see our identity in our purpose, that's where there's fulfillment. That's where there's a sense of peace, even when things aren't going well. Even like with me, I have my challenging days, and there's stuff that doesn't go right, like trying to do a live podcast and videos not working and stuff like that. It happens, and so if I got caught up in if this I have to be leading this the best, and this has to be the best podcast and all that, like I'd be crushed emotionally. But right now, I know our purpose is just to share some ideas that we feel like God has given us, some wisdom that we have around some experiences, and hopefully some people will be able to learn from it. Like, I know that purpose. Going back to what you originally said of like, we stand united by a principle. Stand united by a principle. So, Dr. Rod, thank you. Hey, that was an excerpt from our On the Cube Leadership podcast. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, put a comment below. And if you want to see more content like this, faith-based leadership development content, make sure you check out our channel, give it a subscribe, and hit the bell notification so that you'll be notified when we release new content.